On the World in 80 Days, Chapter 10, in which Passepartout is only too glad to get off with the loss of his shoes. Everybody knows that the great reserve triangle of land, with its base in the north and its apex in the south, which is called India, embraces 1,400,000 square miles, upon which is spread unequally a population of 180 million of souls. The British Crown exercises a real and despotic dominion over the larger portion of this vast country, and has a Governor General stationed in Calcutta, governors in Madras, Bombay, and in Bengal a Lieutenant Governor in Agra. But British India, properly so called, only embraces 700,000 square miles, and a population from 100 to 110 million of inhabitants. A considerable portion of India is still free from British authority, and there are certain ferocious Rajas in the interior who are absolutely independent. The celebrated East India Company was all powerful from 1756, when the English first gained a foothold on the spot where now stands the city of Madras, down to the time of the great Sepoy insurrection. It gradually annexed province after province, purchasing them from the native chiefs, whom it seldom paid, and appointed Governor General and his subordinates, civil and military. But the East India Company has now passed away, leaving the British possessions in India directly under control of the Crown. The aspect of the country, as well as the manners and distinctions of race, is daily changing. Formerly, one was obliged to travel in India by the old cumbersome methods of going on foot or on horseback, and palanquins or unwieldy coaches. Now fast steamboats ply on the Indus and the Ganges, and a great railway with branches joining the main line at many points on its route traverses the peninsula from Bombay to Calcutta in 3 days. This railway does not run in a direct line across India. The distance between Bombay and Calcutta, as the bird flies, is only from 1,000 to 1,100 miles, but the deflections of the road increase this distance by more than a third. The general route of the Great Indian Peninsula Railway is as follows. Leaving Bombay, it passes through Salsette, crossing the continent opposite Tanai, goes over the chain of western Ghauts, and runs thence northeast far as Burhampur, skirts the nearly independent territory of Bundelkund, ascends to Allahabad, turns thence eastward, meeting the Ganges at Benares, then departs from the river a little, and, descending southeastward by Burdvan and the French town of Chardanagar, has its terminus in Calcutta. The passengers of the Mongolia went ashore at 4:30 p.m. At exactly 8, the train would start for Calcutta. Mr. Fogg, after bidding goodbye to his whist partners, left the steamer, gave his servant several errands to do, urged it upon him to be at the station promptly at 8, and, with his regular step, which bare to the second like an astronomical clock, directed his steps to the passport office. As for the wonders of Bombay, its famous city hall, its splendid library, its forts and docks, its bazaars, mosques, and synagogues, its Armenian churches, and the noble pagoda on Malabar Hill, with 2 polygonal towers, he cared not a straw to see them. He would not deign to examine even the masterpieces of Elephantana or the mysterious hypogea concealed southeast from the docks, or those fine remains of Buddhist architecture, the Canarian grottos of the Isle of Salsette. Having transacted his business at the passport office, Phileas Fogg repaired quietly to the railway station, where he ordered dinner. Among the dishes served up to him, the landlord especially recommended a certain giblet of native rabbit on which he prided himself. Mr. Fogg accordingly tasted the dish, but, despite its spice sauce, found it far from palatable. He rang for the landlord, and, on his appearance, fixing his clear eyes upon him, "Is this rabbit, sir?" "Yes, my lord," the rogue boldly replied, "rabbit from the jungles." "And this rabbit did not mew when he was killed?" "Mew, my lord? What, a rabbit mew? I swear to you." "Be so good, landlord, as not to swear, but remember this. Cats were formerly considered in India as sacred animals. That was a good time. For the cats, my lord? Perhaps for the travelers as well." After which Mr. Fogg quietly continued his dinner. Fix had gone on shore shortly after Mr. Fogg, and his first destination was the headquarters of the Bombay police. He made himself known as a London detective, told his business at Bombay and the position of the affairs relative to the supposed robber, and nervously asked if a warrant had arrived from London. It did not reach the office. Indeed, there had not yet been time for it to arrive. Fix was sorely disappointed and tried to obtain an order of arrest from the director of the Bombay police. This the director refused, as the matter concerned the London office, which alone could legally deliver the warrant. Fix did not insist, and was fain to resign himself to await the arrival of an important document, but he was determined not to lose sight of the mysterious rogue as long as he stayed in Bombay. He did not doubt for a moment any more than Passepartout that Phileas Fogg would remain there, at least until it was time for the warrant to arrive. Passepartout, however, had no sooner heard his master's orders on leaving the Mongolia than he saw at once that they were to leave Bombay as they had done Suez and Paris, and that the journey would be extended at least as far as Calcutta, and perhaps beyond this place. He began to ask himself if this bet that Mr. Fogg talked about was not really in good earnest, and whether his fate was not in truth forcing him, despite his love of repose, around the world in 80 days. Having purchased the usual quota of shirts and shoes, he took a leisurely promenade about the streets, where the crowds of people of many nationalities, Europeans, Persians with pointed caps, Banyas with round turbans, Sindhis with square bonnets, Parsis with black mitres, and long-robed Armenians were collected. It happened to be the day of a Parsi festival. These descendants of the sect of Zoroaster, the most thrifty, civilized, intelligent, and austere of the East Indians, among whom counted the richest native merchants of Bombay, were celebrating a sort of religious carnival, with processions and shows, in the midst of which Indian dancing girls, clothed in rose-colored gauze, looped up with gold and silver, danced airily but with perfect modesty to the sound of viols and clanging of tambourines. It was needless to say that Passepartout watched these curious ceremonies with staring eyes and gaping mouth, and that his countenance was that of the greenest booby imaginable. Unhappily for his master as well as for himself, his curiosity drew him unconsciously further off than he intended to go. At last, having seen the Paris carnival wind away from the distance, he was turning his steps toward the station, when he happened to espy the splendid pagoda of Malabar Hill, and was seized with an irresistible desire to see its interior. He was quite ignorant that it was forbidden to Christians to enter certain Indian temples, and even the faithful must not go in without first leaving their shoes outside the door. It may be said here was the wise policy of the British government severely punishes a disregard of the practices of the native religions. Passepartout, however, thinking no harm, went in like a simple tourist, and was soon lost in the admiration of the splendid Brahmin ornamentation which everywhere met his eyes, when of a sudden he found himself sprawling on the sacred flagging. He looked up to behold 3 enraged priests, who forthwith fell upon him, tore off his shoes, and began to beat him with loud, savage exclamation. The agile Frenchman was soon upon his feet again, and lost no time in knocking down 2 of his long-gowned adversaries with fists and legs, with fists and a vigorous application of his toes. Then, rushing out of the pagoda as fast as his legs could carry him, he soon escaped the 3rd priest by mingling with the crowd in the streets. At 5 minutes before 8, Passepartout, hatless, shoeless, and having the squabble lost his package of shirts and shoes, rushed breathlessly into the station. Fix, who followed Mr. Fogg to the station, saw that he was really going to leave Bombay, was there upon the platform. He resolved to follow the supposed robber to Calcutta, and further, if necessary. Passepartout did not observe the detective, who stood in an obscure corner, but Fix heard him relate his adventure in a few words to Mr. Fogg. "I hope this will not happen again," said Phileas Fogg coldly as he got into the train. Poor Passepartout, quite crestfallen, followed his master without a word. Fix was on the point of entering another carriage when an idea struck him, which induced him to alter his plan. "No, I'll stay," muttered he. "An offense has been committed on Indian soil. I've got my man." Just then the locomotive gave a sharp screech and the train passed out into the darkness of the night. This is the end of chapter 10. So Passepartout did his shopping, went sightseeing, didn't follow the local customs, went into a place where he shouldn't have, kept his shoes on in a place where he shouldn't have, and then got chased out of it. Lost his baggage, lost his shoes, lost his hat. So here he is riding barefoot, at least until Calcutta, or the next town where he can maybe get shoes. He lost all the stuff that he went and bought, so, that means Phileas Fogg is without shirt and without an extra shirt and other things like that. So, now there are a lot of places where you take off your shoes before you enter. Like, in our house, we take off our shoes by the door. A lot of places you take off your shoes at the door. It's very common in Europe and Asia. In Japan, it's just insanely rude to leave your shoes on when you enter a building. It's like you walk in, you take off your shoes, you go in. So shoes off inside. You probably won't be beaten for it, but shoes off inside. It's good manners.